So we now should have downloaded this file, and it's in our directory SIO209/lessons, and we're going to now go through the tutorial here. So for today, you don't absolutely have to have this file on your computer. Everything is on GitHub already, and you can just look at it. But in the future, we're going to be working with more interactive files, these Jupyter notebooks, and so you'll want to be able to do this task of downloading the file and renaming it. Okay, so we have our terminals open here, and we can open this file, but let's just go back to GitHub, and we're going to follow along here. So I'm going to try to make this so we can view the whole file. Okay. So what I've done is I've set up my screen so that I've got on one side I've got the lesson for today, and on the other side I've got my terminal. So we can just stay in this directory here, this SIO209/lessons, and then we can follow along with the exercises for today. So what we're going to learn today is a number of skills for using the command line. So we'll learn how to move between directories and create and remove files, work with commands and processes, look at text files, parse files, work with input and output, work with absolute and relative paths and symbolic links, work with bash variables, commands, text editors, executing scripts, and setting up your terminal environment. So first here we're going to start with some basic commands. So these are commands for moving between directories and creating and removing files. So the first thing we're going to do is pwd. This stands for print working directory. So we go back to our terminal here and just type pwd, and that's going to show us where we're living, so to speak, right now. So this is on the Mac. It's going to be something /users, and then your username, and then SIO209 and lessons, because that's where we are right now. We can then type. So are people able to get pwd? So this is useful. So I have, and I'll show you how to do this if you're interested. I have set up my prompt so it shows me where I am right now. So it's a duplicate information here, but you might not have that yet, and if you're interested, we can set you up with that. But you're always going to want to be able to have this command at the ready to be able to know where you are. This would be analogous to in our Finder which folder we're in. So if I go to my home and SIO209 lessons, I'm working in this folder, this directory at this particular moment. So this is effectively the same. The information I'm getting, like in this bar down at the bottom here, if you have that activated, or up at the top, is the same information that we're getting from pwd. And by the way, if you want to, you can show the path bar or show the status bar to have that information displayed at the bottom of your Finder window, which I think is convenient. Okay, so that's pwd. Next one is ls. This is list the contents of your working directory. So just type ls, and you should see that file that we just downloaded. That's the only contents. Now, there are some other versions of ls that are useful. So there's one called ls. There's options rather. So it's the same command, but we're using flags to use different options. So ls-a is listing all the contents of that directory. Right now, the only things that are in there are dot and dot dot, and all those refer to is a dot is the current directory, and dot dot is one directory above that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, my screen went off. Okay.
It might just be. Oh, it's back. I think it's just the HDMI.
Okay.
Plugging into your computer.
Okay. I'll try not to move it too much. Okay, so you should see these two dot files in there, but if we go to our home directory, we'd see more. I'll show you that in a minute. Another option for ls is ls-l. This shows the long format, so this is showing us that we have some different permissions for different users on this file. We have the username here. We have a date when it was created, so just a few minutes ago. There's more we can talk about with this. There's a lot of information here that we can dig into if you're interested, but provides some extra information about the file. Another command is cd. So cd has a number of different versions, or again, different ways of operating. So if we just type cd by itself, it will take us to our home directory. And we can verify this by typing pwd, and you'll see now we're in our home directory. We can then type cd sio 209, and you'll see I'm using tab notation, so I can type the first few letters and hit tab, and if that's the only option, it will automatically complete that. And if not, and if I type tab twice, it'll show me all of the different options I have that start with S. So I'm now in SIO 209, and now I can go to, I can type cd again into lessons. Now if I want to go up one, I can use that dot dot directory, which means one directory above. So I can type cd dot dot and hit enter, and that will take me one directory above. Another option is I can type cd, and then you're always adding a space between the command and the arguments, or whatever comes after the command. So I can type cd dash, and it will take me back to where I was before, and it'll tell me, it will give me a little alert saying, yeah, this is where you are now. Because you can imagine you could be in some far off place on your computer and bring you right back to where you were using this command. Any questions about cd? Yeah?
Yeah, in the exercises online, they
Yeah.
were talking about prop D, or I think there was push D, prop G or something.
Push and pop, yeah.
How does that differ from CD dash?
It's kind of a matter of personal preference. Like, I don't really use push and pop like at all. Like, I just never adopted those habits.
Yeah.
If you find those useful, I didn't cover them in this tutorial because they're just not commands that
Yeah, it just
that I
seems
use.
like this is much easier than
Yeah.
push D prop.
Yeah, everybody kind of has their own way of doing things, and you kind of learn as you go. And yeah, so I think whatever works for you. For me, this is easy. And typically, if I'm working in a lot of different places on my computer, I'll just open up a new tab. You know, Terminal has tabs, or a new separate window if you want to have. So if you want to open a new tab, it's just Command T, and if you want to open a whole new window, it's Command N. So that would be Command T, and I'll just type exit because I don't want to actually have that window open. Or Command N will open a whole new window. Again, I don't need that right now, but so if I'm working in a lot of different places, I might have a second or third or fourth window open so that I can organize things better instead of just having one window open. There's another command called screen, which will basically put stuff into the background. I could maybe add that to the tutorial, but there's a lot. In fact, I recently got this book about the Bash shell, and I've been going through it and surprised at how much extra stuff there is that you don't need to know on a daily basis, but you can really get pretty deep. It's a whole programming language, really. All right, so we already covered make directory, but this is just a command to make a directory. Let's just, for fun, let's try it again. So type pwd and make sure we're all in the same place so that we're not getting astray. So make sure you're in your lessons folder, and then you can type make directory and just call it temp. I use temp as a thing all the time for a file that I know I'm only going to work with for a few minutes, and I'm not creative enough to think of another name. So so make directory temp, and then you can type ls, and now you'll see that you've got two files there, and again, mine's colored because of the way I set up my terminal, and we can give you guys the option for that later. You can type ls-l, and it will now show us that we have, again, these two things in our folder. One of them is a directory, so it starts with a D. The other one is a regular file, so it just starts with a dash. And then we've got some permissions listed here, and some information about what's in those files. So again, we could cd to temp to go into that. Type ls, there's nothing there. It's an empty directory. If we type ls-a, well, it does have those default two dot files, but those aren't actually any content. We can type cd ... to go back up one level. And since we didn't really want that directory anyway, it was just an example, we can remove it. So we can type rmdir, remove directory, and then temp. And now if we type ls, now we'll see that we just deleted it. Remove directory only works on a empty directory. So if there's anything in that directory, you can't delete it using that command. There's another way to do it that we'll cover in a minute, but it's only for removing an empty directory. So it's a safety mechanism for you to not delete something important. Another command is touch. So we can type touch, and we'll call this one foo. So now we've created a file. If we type ls-l, we now have an empty file, so that we see it has 0 bytes in this column. And so this is just an empty file. If we type less foo, and I'll describe less in a minute, but we've already used it once. That's to show the contents of that file. There's nothing there. It's empty. Now, there could be reasons why you'd want to create an empty file. Maybe you want it to exist before you start adding content to it. But touch also has some other things it can do. It can actually change the just typing that command, it literally sort of touches the file, so it's as if it was modified, and you can actually provide the date and time that you want. If you wanted to change the date or time of a file, let's say you had some photos and your camera wasn't, I do this all the time actually, if your camera, you didn't set the time on your camera, and when you import the photos they have the wrong year or the wrong date, you can use touch to actually change the date of those files to what it was. That's beyond the scope of this course, but it's useful. So we're going to we'll leave that there for now. So another command is cat. So if we type cat foo, it will print the contents of foo. Now currently we don't have anything in that file. So another thing we can do with cat is we can write content to a file. So let's call this one bar. So we're going to type cat and then this greater than symbol and then bar. So this is going to write text from the screen to this file. So if we hit enter, it's going to give us a prompt.
Do you need all the spaces here, or is that just for readability? Like after, I mean, obviously you need it before the greater than, you need it after the greater than?
Yes. Yes, you need those spaces. There might be some exceptions, but in general, yes, you need those. You need those spaces to delineate the commands. So we can type some. It doesn't really matter what we write. I'm just going to write some content, and you can hit enter to. So now we've got a file with 3 lines, and I hit enter again just because I want my file to end on a new line character. So I've typed these 3 lines, and now you can hit Control C. This is important, and it'll actually show you the Control C there. So now if we type ls, we've got these 3 files. We type ls-l. We see we now have this bar file that has some content in it. So if we type cat again, but without the greater than symbol, without that redirect symbol, cat bar, we now will get the contents of that file. We could type cat lesson 2, but then we'd print out the entire contents of lesson 2, and that would fill up our screen with words. So we don't want to do that. But there's another actually command that will hopefully yes, we'll cover that one in a minute. That allows us to do that. Briefly, I'll just give you a preview. If we don't want to see the whole file and we just want to see the first few lines, we can type head. So we type head bar, we're going to get just those same 3 lines. But if we type head lesson 2, we'll get the first 10 lines of lesson 2. So this is convenient also if you just want to preview a file and you don't want to see the whole thing. But
Just put in there how many lines you want it to get.
yes, you can. If you type. So what I did there was I just used the up arrow to show the previous command. And you can type -n3 and it'll show you the first 3 lines. Or you could do any number, any integer of lines to see. So coming back to cat, we can print the contents of a file, we can write to a file, and there's a third option to append to a file. So if we wanted to actually add some content to this file foo, we could do cat double greater than symbol foo, and we can do the same thing, but this is going to append content to that file rather than creating a new file. So if we now type cat foo without any special characters, it'll print the content of that file. So we've now changed that file.
Would that help if you have a file where we did this with one myself, where someone hasn't hit an enter at the end so that you start on a new character?
Mhm.
Is that how you could do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. And
Yeah, that's a good example. So let's see that. So let's do. I'm going to overwrite. I'm going to do a few things here. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to overwrite that file. So I'm going to type cat to foo. Now this is going to delete whatever I had. So use this very carefully. So when I type that, now I'm creating a new file that had the same name as before. And I'm going to hit Control-C before I enter a new line. So it's just going to be the words, but no new line character. So if I type cat foo, okay, what's going on? Okay, that didn't seem to work the way I intended. There might be that might actually be a feature of how cat works. So let's do something else. Yes, but what Amanda was saying was basically here we had, let's just look at bar. So we have this file that's got 3 lines, each ending in a new line. If we want to add, say, an empty line to that file, one thing we could do is we could do cat append to bar, and we're just going to type enter and then Control-C. And now if we look at that file again, we've added a new line to that. So let's say you had a file that didn't have a new line on it. This would be a really quick way to just like add that on there. It always appends to the bottom. Yeah, it's just a true append command. Okay. A few more commands here in our basic list. So there's these are all like critical ones that you use all the time though. So it's good to spend some time on them. So we have copy. So if we want to make a copy, remember we had our file foo doesn't have anything in it because of the way that the cat command works when we created it. So we can copy bar to foo. So now whatever was in bar is going to be in foo. And type ls or ls-l, and we can see that now they have the same number of bytes. And we can type we can actually type cat foo bar. So cat also works with multiple files or with, as we'll see later, wildcards, which are commands that could stand for anything. So we basically took that file and we looked at both the original and the copy, and we can see that they're the same. So this actually creates a copy of a file. If we want to move a file or rename a file, we can use this command move or mv. So if we want to take foo and we can call it, we're going to rename it foo2, we can use that command, and now we can see that we no longer have foo, we now have foo2. We can also do things like moving a file, like the more traditional way you think about moving, which is to another place on your computer. So if we want to make a directory again, let's make this temp directory again, make directory, and now we can move foo2 to temp. This is tricky. So move. No, it doesn't, because temp exists. So it knows that that's a folder and not a new file.
But so if you type the name of your folder wrong or something, it would just rename it. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So yeah. So if we do that, type ls, and now we cd temp and ls, we'll see that foo2 is there. Now we can move it back. So we're in temp, and you can type pwd to make sure we're in temp. You can move foo2 back where it was, which is up 1. So type ... Now it's no longer where it was. It's now up one, so we can actually cd up one as well, and type ls, and now it's back where it was. Now, if we did what Amanda was saying, and we actually typed the command wrong, we type move foo2 to, instead of we typing temp, we type tamp. We've now renamed it instead of moving it. In the Unix way of doing things, moving and renaming are kind of the same thing, right? You're either, but the way it interprets your command depends on what exists already on your computer. If there's a directory, it interprets it as a directory. If there's no directory of that name, then it interprets it as a file name. Takes some getting used to, but so we can move that back to foo2 because that's not what we wanted. Now, yeah.
This is probably a silly object-based language question, but for this, obviously, we're relying heavily on the order that we're adding these things. Is there any way we can specify, if we don't remember exactly what the call to move is, can we say move file equals, so we want to know this is the thing that we're trying to move, and then location equals or something like that, or does it have to be in the right order at all times?
So some like with Python, a lot of the commands you can specify the name of the argument, and it doesn't matter which order you put them in. But with these very basic commands, or really any bash commands, they typically don't have more than one or two arguments, but they have to be in the exact order. The one sort of exception is that when the argument is a file name, it can either be provided after the command as typical, or it can be what we call piped into the command. So instead of providing that file name as the argument, it would be, you can cat, I'll show you this in a minute, you can do cat file name, which spits out the content of that file, and then you do a bar, which is a pipe, and that pipes that output into that command. So that's a way to change up the order, but in general, you just need to memorize how the commands are structured and use them that way. But somebody put all these commands on GitHub in a nice, well-organized fashion, so you can just go to the website. Okay, a couple more here in this section, and then we'll take a quick break. So we have now a few different files here. We're going to type. We've done copy. We've done move. Now we're going to remove. Let's say we want to remove this copy of this file that we don't need. So we already saw remove directory. We can remove that temp directory. Now we can remove a file. We can type just rm foo2, hit enter. Now mine is set up so that it will ask me if I want to, so I'm going to hit, well, if you were to type, I hit cancel, so if you were to type rm-i foo2, it would ask you if you want to delete that. I have my terminal set up so that it always asks me if I want to delete the file in case I make a mistake, right? I don't want, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So I'll type yes, and now I've deleted that file. And you can delete multiple files. You can even delete if you have a directory that has contents in it. So let's actually make directory temp again, and let's copy bar to temp. Here's another thing with the copy that I didn't tell you about. So if I type copy bar temp, this will copy the file bar to the directory that I just made called temp. We covered that. It'll have the same name. Now, if I type temp slash something like bar2, it will call that file. It won't call it bar now. It will call it bar2. So here is where I'm at now. And if I type ls, another thing with ls is I don't have to be in the directory that I'm listing the contents of. I can type ls temp, and it will tell me the contents of temp, not of my current directory. So here we can see that in temp we now have bar2. Okay, but we're still in the main lessons folder. Now, if I try to remove directory, it says I get this error message, rmdir, that's the name of the command, and it says, this is basically an error message. It says temp directory is not empty. And we know that remove directory has to have an empty directory. So what can we do? Well, we can do rm, we try to type rm temp, it says temp is a directory, and rm typically doesn't delete directories. But there's an option, rm-r, which recursively deletes files. And yours might not give you this question either, because this is a part of the -i option that I have set up, but I can say, yes, I want to examine, and yes, I want to delete that, and yes, I want to delete the folder, and now I've deleted it. So again, if you type this, probably it just worked, right? But if you have this safety mechanism in place, which is this -i option, it would ask you, yeah.
So that -r basically just overrides.
Yeah, it means recursive.
Oh,
So
okay.
it means I want to delete this folder and everything inside it, which is what you want to do with if you have a folder that has stuff in it. Because neither remove typically is just for files, remove directory is for empty directories, but if you have a directory that has stuff in it, you need that -r. So that's critical. Then you'll see that -r option in different situations where you want to do something to a whole directory and not just to one thing.
So you have this cool color setup too, where like you can see the file
Yeah.
and your output is different from your prompt and stuff. Is that all in your you've set that up?
Yeah, in fact, we will cover that in about a couple minutes. It's in this section here. Yeah. So we're going to do one last command here, and so we type exit, and this will take us out of our session. It says saving session completed, and now I can safely close this window without worrying about losing anything or interrupting anything.